As a kid, what's the creepiest thing you ever noticed about another kid's family? None of the males in the family used a toilet seat. They all believed that it was meant only for women to use because of something involving their anatomy. It didn't matter if they were in public or at home, they would put the lid up and sit on the rim. Unfortunately for me, they were the only Jewish family I knew. So I went through most of my childhood thinking that Jewish males were prohibited from using toilet seats. It was always really creepy to me when my friends' dads would pay too much attention to their daughter's body or mine. I had a friend that wasn't allowed to hang out with me anymore because I had started developing boobs. I actually knew a lot of people with dads like this. One would pants his teenage daughters all the time, underwear included. Really grimy. A girl I know growing up was punished by being forced to get naked. If she did something wrong, they made her hang out naked. I remember coming over to her house to ask to play, and the dad opened the door and there she is, naked and afraid in the background. I can't confirm she was being molested, but Jesus, it's highly probable. Sick fucks. And on the other end of the spectrum, I used to play at this girl's house all the time. The family didn't seem nuts or super crazy paressy, but they didn't seem overly welcoming and warm either. Anyway, we were good friends. Nothing too creepy used to go on from my memories. Fast forward to our senior year in high school and the dad got busted in a huge child pornography ring with content involving children as young as 9 months old. He was a fucking closet pervert. And they ran a daycare out of their home. You can't always judge a book by its cover, I guess. I once stayed at a friend's house, and they had this dirty cloth by the sink. It's what I would have used at home as a face cloth, and people would usually use it to wash their faces or hands. Turns out, when they use the toilet, they wipe their bums as normal, then use this damn cloth to get the remnants, so they're really clean. Bit of a flaw here. The whole family used this one cloth between them. No idea how often it was washed. Who cares? It was covered in tiny little spots of poo and had been used by everyone. It would have been filthy after one use either way. There was also the fact that they decided the best place for it was on the sink. So weird. The rest of their house was clean and they seemed relatively normal. I went over one of my best friend's houses often growing up and played games in their basement. They had a freezer in the basement where his mother kept a several-month-old fetus that she miscarried in a glass jar. His mother told me she believed that was a life and she didn't know what else to do with it. His mom was a bit creepy, and although I could recommend a few other things that might be better fit, I can guess I can understand where she's coming from. I had a friend who was terrified of turning 13. Her stepdad had a big thing about how terrible teenagers were. Her 2 older brothers, when they turned 13, would be forced to do all the household chores. If they ran out of chores, they had to stand on a particular kitchen tile until bedtime. If they didn't, they were beaten. I got all of this a little at a time from my friend and didn't piece together how bad it was until later. I wish I had told someone. She moved schools before she turned 13 and I lost touch with her. I still feel guilty. I had a friend that went to same babysitter. He and his sister were pretty strange. He was very grabby/huggy. She didn't say a single word until like age 7. I went to their house once, and their dad did nothing but yell the whole time. There was a room that I was told we couldn't play in because it was theirs and dad's special room. As an adult, looking back at it, I'm almost certain those 2 kids were being sexually and physically abused. Our neighbors owned over 40 pets. Yes, 40. Their yard was full of garbage and they'd literally just let their dogs die in the yard. The children were filthy and always seemed sick. Hell, one of them would eat dirt or dog food if you asked him to. One time, my father went over there to help fix something in their home and almost stepped on their newborn baby because it was laying in a pile of dirty clothes. Found out years later that the kids were inbred. Not creepy, just puzzling. My best friend's family, when I was about 7 or 8, didn't drink anything with meals. I remember asking for water or milk or something, and they were all like, I didn't think much about it at the time, but to this day I've never met anyone else who as a rule doesn't consume liquid at the same time as solids. A family that lived across the street from me had 2 daughters, 7 and 8 years old I think. They shared a bedroom, which wasn't too weird, but when my family visited them the parents gave a tour of the house. They had an extra room aside from the kids' bedroom, which was completely empty, and they wouldn't show us inside the kids' room. I was never allowed to play in their house, which didn't strike me as weird at the time, because I was young, and I preferred to play outside. One time they spent the night at my house, and in the middle of the night I woke up to both of them opening my closet and squatting down to pee in it. I got my mom and she interrogated those kids about it, but they acted like it was a perfectly normal thing to do. They explained that they weren't allowed outside of their room at night, so if they had to potty, they had to do it in their closet. I didn't really understand it at the time, but it pissed off my mom a lot and made her really suspicious. She didn't let them stay the night at our house anymore, but she kept a close eye on them and asked the kids a lot of questions. They were kicked out of the house around 8 in the morning and told to play outside with no supervision. They weren't allowed back until nighttime and always ate dinner outside, no matter what the weather was. They ate snacks at my house sometimes, and I think that and dinner might have been their only meals. Both of them always had a backpack with them, but they never opened it and would never tell me what was inside. I suspect the backpacks had their clothes in them because they weren't allowed in their rooms during the day, and they made some weird comments about stuff I had in my room, like the dresser. Not sure if they were being hit/molested like a lot of other kids in this thread, but their parents definitely wanted nothing to do with them. They ended up moving out really suddenly, and I suspect my parents called CPS or something on them. I hope they are okay. Ugh. I don't know why I remember this, but I do. My best friend at the time, named Ashay, was the middle child. She had an older sister named Nicole and a younger brother named Jack. Nicole was obsessed with Jack's dick. She was about 8 as I recall, and called his dick Softbit. She told me that it was fun to play with, and she liked bouncing it. One time during a sleepover, Ashay was asleep and both me and Nicole were awake. Nicole kept repeating Softbit, touch it. When I finally said I didn't want to, she said everyone in my family touches it. Friends had a Jesus clock. It was a creepy cuckoo style clock with Jesus and the apostles. It rang on the hour and his mom would gather all us up and make us write thank you notes to Jesus thanking him for what we did the last hour. Example: thank you Jesus for letting us play with Legos and eat cookies for snack. His mom would then edit and critique them, saying things like, you had milk too. Do you want to make Jesus sad because you are not thankful for the milk? They also had a full room decked out like a chapel with burning candles, statues, and pews. Every room had massive 4-foot tall crucifixes too in them. I hated going over there. Last I heard from them was 5 to 6 years ago. What happened to the kids? The youngest became a Catholic priest. The second youngest moved out and is a transsexual entertainer, and the oldest, my friend, became a programmer in Silicon City. 2 of the kids are hardcore atheists, not the priest obviously. The father eventually left the mother. Not really a kid, but when I was in high school I knew a girl who had a really flirtatious relationship with her father. Her folks were split up, and she had this fake, high cute as voice she would use. Imagine a little girl saying I love you, dad, I, but coming out of a 16-year-old's mouth. They also hugged and kissed way too much. When I was 4, my friend invited me and my family to his beach house for Memorial Day weekend. When we got there, I noticed the house had lots of pictures of old planes in the hallway and in the living room. My parents were acting weird, and we left really quickly. The planes were all Nazi planes from WW2. They had decorated their beach house with family photos and Nazi memorabilia, and then invited Jews to said beach house. After that weekend, I was never allowed to talk to him again. Oh boy, have I got one. My best friend growing up lived across the street from me, and her father is a complete psycho. He was always buying the kids new pets, rabbits, dogs, iguanas, rats, whatever they wanted, only for those pets to disappear within a few months as the family got tired of them. He was super religious and always telling his kids crazy lies about everything, like that they has rich relatives who didn't exist, or that his youngest had cancer when she didn't. He was real quiet, and whenever any of his kids had friends over he would stand silently in the doorway the entire time, which is maybe possible as socially awkward concern on its own, but less so in the other contexts. He was always making his daughter come home from sleepovers at like 3 in the morning. He would just walk over, knock, and ask for her. He was always complaining that his kids' friends were bad influences or too slutty, even in grad school. One day my dog got loose, and he drove his truck up across 3 neighbors' lawns trying to run it over, in broad daylight with neighbors out all around. But none of that compares to shitstorm which happened when Obama was elected president. He immediately decided that the neighborhood would be overrun with black people and bought a German Shepherd because he heard they didn't like black people and thought he would needed to protect the family. It has since bitten 3 people, none of them black, including myself and an 8-year-old boy, and most recently the aging lady across the street who needed stitches afterward. But that isn't the end of it. Along with the dog, he bought a shed and several rabbits, the fluffy kind from the pet store, and started to breed them. The economy is going to collapse and I need to feed my family. So his family was regularly eating litters of little white and black pet rabbits. He then let his youngest daughter pick one of the babies and keep it in her room and raise it. She even named it Pantoufles for a year or so before her father got tired of the rabbits. When he got tired of them, they were all killed and eaten, including Pantoufles. That's right, he forced his young teenaged suburban daughter to eat her own pet. One girl seemed to have some serious issues with her dad. Otherwise she was pretty cool, and we each liked each other. But we couldn't date, because her dad wouldn't approve of it. I was like, well, I'm a well-mannered guy I think, and I can dress well, and present myself well. Let me meet him sometime, and I'm sure it'll be cool. But no, I couldn't even meet him. Nobody could ever go over to her house. I dunno, she just talked about him way too much in certain situations. She was super cautious too about talking about her home life. It was just kinda weird and all my friends picked up on it too. I had a friend in grade school / junior high who lived on a large, working dairy farm with her brother, mom and dad, and a revolving assortment of foster kids. Guess who did all of the work on that farm? These were mostly city kids who'd probably never touched a cow up to that point, getting up at 4 o'clock a.m. to milking, mucking, feeding and God knows what else. Then they got to go to school. When they got home, it was more work until bedtime. Their bedrooms were on the 3rd floor, very clean, hot in summer, freezing in winter. The birth children, in the meantime, were treated like the little prince and princess. Never lifted a finger and you never saw cow shit on their shoes. In the meantime, the parents were the most ostentatious Christians in the neighborhood. Watched some televangelist every Sunday for 2 hours and constantly talked about Jesus and how good God had been to them. Instead of thanking God and giving him credit, they should have thanked the state for all free labor the foster system had paid them to care for. Or maybe they should have just treated those poor kids like human beings. One of my neighbors, I think she was 10 to 11 at the time, had a pretty creepy dad. My mom caught him looking in at her through her window when she was taking a bath. Also, a lot of the neighborhood kids would hang out at her house, myself and my sister included, and one time he offered all of us beer. Not offhandedly either, but more like, hey, I've got some beers in here for you guys, come get one. Also, another one of my neighbors had a girl who at 14 was dating a 27-year-old. Her parents were fully aware of this and had no problem with it. Her dad also got fired from his workplace shortly before retirement because he wouldn't stop looking at porn while at work. How similar his mum and dad looked. Not incredibly similar, but their facial structure was pretty uniform. Well, turned out his father was his mother's uncle, so there we